For people who enjoy stories and other forms of art, it is all about the enjoyment of that work of art, that photograph, that video short, that movie. But for the artist, it's all about enjoying being in that place of creativity. It's all about that thrill of feeling creatively energized and inspired. While we are being creative, we're working hard, but it feels great. It doesn't feel like drudgery. And for people who with aptitudes for creativity, this force, this strong feeling, this mode that we can go into is very hard to resist. Most everyone interested in making art and becoming creative, the question is, how can we become more creative? Meaning, how can we further enhance that mode that we go into, where the byproduct are these works of art? And yes, we enjoyed thinking about what the art was going to look like and feel like and what it would say when we were done with it. But that was just one of focusing on those things was just a way of focusing on our enjoyment of getting deeper into a creative mode. So this is a good question to ask. How can we become more creative? Throughout history, people have done some drastic things, all to become more creative. You have artists who take all kinds of strong narcotics. You have artists who deprive themselves of sleep or lock themselves in rooms for days at a time or become hermits, go and try to remove themselves from society altogether. This is really the reason I make these videos, is because it puts me in the zone. So creativity is like a muscle. It's something that you can get better at, that gets better with age, that can continue to grow and become stronger. This is a good reason why young people should relax and know that the best is waiting for them in years ahead. What we can do is we can ask ourselves, how can I become more creative? And you can actually start utilizing ways to become more creative. First of all, it's helpful to appreciate that creativity is not something added on to the social animal surviving. It isn't like an additional mental capacity we have just to enjoy that doesn't have to do with the fight to survive. Creativity is, what we call creativity is a mental aptitude that the nature of creativity really shows where it comes from. Creative mode really kicks into gear when we are adapting. The creative aptitude is one way that humans become highly adapting animals. I think one reason creative people like change is because they like to adapt. When they are put into environments where they need to rapidly adapt, their creative aptitude really kicks into gear, and they are given a chance to show themselves and others how they are particularly smart at adapting. So if you want to strengthen that creative muscle, if you want to, the fire of creativity, if you want to throw fuel on it and make it burn brighter and stronger, what you can do is you can put yourself into situations where you need to adapt. Here is one of my favorite ways of doing this. Now, on New Year's Eve, if I happen to have a good resolution, I'll go ahead and make a New Year's resolution. That is the tradition of saying, this year I'm going to start drinking at least 2 glasses of water a day and try to do it for as long as possible, hopefully develop a new good habit. That's a New Year's resolution. New Year's resolutions can be kind of tiring. There's one much funner thing to do, and that is to create a New Year's arbitrary rule. Okay, let's see. Arbitrary, based on random choice or personal whim rather than any reason or system. This is a beautiful word. To come up with an arbitrary rule helps us to become more creatures of free will. One arbitrary rule I had was that I could never talk about the same thing within a day. So if I talked about the weather with one person, I couldn't talk about the weather with anyone else for the rest of that day. What this did was this forced me to need to improvise more, come up with more things to talk about, ask more questions, try to look for alternatives to what I could bring up in a conversation, and also ways of steering the conversation in a different way, simply because I had already talked about that topic earlier in the day. Some of the best conversations I've ever had in my life took place when I had this arbitrary rule in place. Another arbitrary rule could be, I will not think the same way about another person. So if you're used to thinking about a person as being grouchy, someone at your work, because they are, you're going to have to start trying to see more into them, trying to, without being too nosy, trying to understand more about them, looking at them as deeper, having more sides to them, more history to them, more narrative, more drama and humanity. And of course, a year-long arbitrary rule in the way that you practice your art is a great tool. If you, through an arbitrary rule, place a limit on yourself, that is going to push you into unknown territory. For a while, I had an arbitrary rule where I must avoid all main streets, and this pushed me down alleyways and walking through vacant lots and sometimes going down a dead end and having to run across a yard. This pushed me into unknown territory. Even though it was still in the city I lived in, it helped me to understand that even though I didn't move, I could still move. I could still venture into the unknown. If you drive a car, you're going to have a vastly different experience if you ride a bike. And if you ride a bike, you're going to have a vastly different experience if you walk. And if you walk, you're going to have a vastly different experience if every 100 steps you stop and take a picture. So New Year's is far away, but what you can do in your journal is one of your journal exercises, you can do it once a week, is try to come up with an arbitrary rule so that by the time New Year's rolls around, you're going to have one great arbitrary rule that you can put into place and enforce upon yourself. Arbitrary rules work best when they somehow limit previous behavior, and what it causes you to do, your creative mind kicks into play and starts creating for you alternatives and building for you a new world about how to operate. Humans are creatures of yin and yang, of night and day. So because I am mostly a free-spirited personality, the opposite, my inner disciplinarian, has to be very strong to make sure this free-spirited personality doesn't just fly off like one of those firecrackers that spins all over the place and goes in a lot of random directions. So my interdisciplinarian is very chop, you have a rule, you absolutely have to follow it. So when you create a arbitrary rule, the effort you need to do, you need to put forth an effort in making sure you follow through with that rule, and your creative mind will kick into place to make up for the new condition. Our brains are developed to protect us and close us off from the great mystery and make everything seem normal, it makes sense. But beyond that are things we don't understand. And the artist, without having to jump on a ship or set off walking for hundreds and hundreds of miles, we can start on an exploratory adventure and reach the great mystery with one of these arbitrary rules. A good arbitrary rule is one that pushes you to having new experiences where you find yourself in unfamiliar territory, and it becomes part of your life to find yourself in unfamiliar territory, talking to people you would never talk to otherwise, reading parts of books you would never pick up and read before. And we may as well appreciate the fact that life throws us into new territory very often. We start a new job, and this is exactly what we find ourselves in, a situation where we need to adapt rapidly. And why not? We can entertain, for the moment, drastic arbitrary rules. As an exercise, you could write 3 stories about 3 different individuals who started living by drastic arbitrary rules. You could have a character that could never sleep in the same place twice, so each night they had to go and find a new place to sleep. And where would that push them to go? What kind of experiences would they find themselves having? I remember several years ago there was a radio show about someone who had a fear of getting outside of basically like a block radius of where they lived. I know there's a word for that, I can't recall it at the time. And he made these recordings just around the block where he lived, and there are beautiful audio recordings of areas around that one block. Write a short story about someone who has a fear of being seen, so they can talk to people, but they have to find a way to veil themselves from people, and they have to find a way to survive under those circumstances. What do? Do they somehow develop for themselves a job where they can talk with their customers behind a veil where they can exchange money and goods, but the customers can never see them? These are customers they may know very well, but has never seen your main character's face at all. What kind of life circumstances would that character create for themselves? When you place a limit on yourself, it makes you stronger and better in other ways. Appreciate that whatever medium we decide to work in automatically greatly narrows what we can do. And it is the action of that narrowing that causes our creativity to blossom and become stronger. When you decide to write, you're greatly limiting. You can't go out and make audio recordings when you're writing. You're going to have to find some ways to make the words on the page do what you would otherwise do just by going out and with a recorder ask a person a question and record it, or to take a picture of it. You're greatly limited to these symbols on paper to convey to your reader images and sounds and smells and mental phenomena and all of that through this greatly narrowing funnel. It is the reason we don't feel it is this greatly narrowing space is because at the same time that that narrowing happens, the creative ability expands and it actually feels like a vast space. So thanks for watching. If you like my videos and want to do your part to get me to make more of them, please hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, tell a friend, tweet this video or Google Plus it. If you have thought of a great arbitrary rule, go ahead and leave it in the comment. Please take the time to go check out my bizarre alternate reality story in episode form, illustrated, narrated at solomation.com. I hope that you enjoy over the years your creative powers growing stronger and stronger. I hope you come up with great stories in the days ahead, and have a good day.